Hello, everyone. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Candice Hammer, who is the founder and managing partner of Workforce Strategy Advisors. Candice, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Great, Harris. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you very much for asking. So, really looking forward to an amazing conversation, Candice, but I think the best place to start would be the very beginning. So, what does your journey look like from the very beginning? How did you get into entrepreneurship? And how did you get into the position you're in today?
Let's see, how far back do we want to go here? I grew up in Texas and had a lot of mentors in my life. I grew up with a single mother, and she remarried when I was exiting high school. And my stepdad, very much dad to me, started businesses, ran businesses, sat on boards. And at that age, I was so intrigued by even witnessing, everything he had done in his life. He introduced me, or through family and marriage, he introduced me to his brother, which is my uncle, Bob. And he was the national CEO for a staffing company, which became a global company as well. So right out of a very young age, and while going to school, I actually started working in the staffing industry. I was a bit lost, didn't know what I wanted to go into exiting high school or what industry. I really had absolutely no idea. No one goes into staffing thinking that's going to be a forever career or
Yeah.
even what it ended up becoming through my life, right? I was intrigued by it, and I'm lucky that I found something that I dove into and enjoyed. I had amazing mentors, like right out of the gate, balancing, going to school and working at the same time. It was hard because I ended up becoming pretty successful at the recruiting and staffing piece of that, right?
Got
And,
it.
at a very young age, I was like, oh, why do I need to finish university when I can continue down this path and make money,
Yeah.
right? So I balanced that for a while, and transparently, I dove straight into recruiting from that point forward. I took some time to go back to school for a while, but I ultimately returned to an industry that I at once fell in love with at an early stage. So I often tell people, when I tell people how long I've been in some form or fashion of staffing or human capital management, business transformation, I mean, I was a baby, right? I was right out of high school, and even summers was working, for my uncle's business at the time.
Yeah.
So it was fun. I fell into something I really enjoyed, had amazing mentors that I worked with. Ultimately, that led me down this path of recruiting and into technologies at the time that were managing recruiting or vendor management for non-employee labor. Took me down this path. I had a previous coworker from the staffing industry pull me over into a little startup technology at the time, which became a huge industry, and which is vendor management systems, right? And
Right.
managed service providers. Basically is managing the requisition to pay, or the SOW process for organizations to manage their external workforce or professional services, if you will,
Got
right?
it. Right.
So was recruited into that, did not have a technology background, had no idea I was going to become as technical as I had to at one point. So ran a lot of our global customers, a lot of oil and gas customers globally. So fell into that and managing that entire process and all the vendors and professional services for huge oil and gas companies. Never intended to fall into just oil and gas, and I'm not today, but at that point I was living in Houston, Texas, and it's just natural. It's one of the main industries there, right? So fell into it and worked in that world for a long time, was recruited away from the VMS startup company that grew tremendously and ultimately was sold, but was recruited away to start actually a managed services division for a recruiting company, and did that for some time. My daughter is always my measuring stick of how old she is, and that's how long I've been consulting, which is that staffing company that I started the managed services company for, or business for. They wanted me to come back and be a part of more of the staffing arm of their services. And I really had done that before, and I was ready to still evolve and move away from that. So at that point, I had told them, I'll come back and I'll resign, but come back and consult for you guys as needed to build up your managed services division, and did that for some time. was really lucky to land some big customers also in the oil and gas industry. And that was my bread and butter at the beginning of my consulting career. I had focused on contingent labor consulting, if you will, for a while. I had some companies join me, ask me to join them in running their operations several times. It's funny here is how, when you consult for an organization versus when you put that employee hat on, that dynamic
Yeah,
quickly shifts,
very good
right?
point.
So ultimately, I went back out into consulting after joining several companies and running operations for some time. When I went back out into consulting this last time, I actually decided to focus on business transformation services and workforce strategy as a whole. And that is where I built Wing Strategies and then ultimately now Workforce Strategy Advisors.
Amazing. What a journey. What a journey. Kenneth, do you look back on the journey and what part are you most grateful for? Because I'm sure there were some ups and downs, some challenging parts, and some really big wins. But if we talk about the two sides, what is one moment that you look back on that you're really glad you went through is a little bit of a challenging time? And what's one highlight that you'll never forget and you're always discussing it at parties and, always kind of that's your trophy moment of your journey? What would you say to that?
As I was resigning from that staffing company that I built a managed services company for, right? I'm a new mom at that point and was taking a massive risk to start my own consulting practice. And so that was extremely scary, challenging, just facing that because, you eat what you hunt, right? So you ultimately, that entire world now becomes on my shoulders in trying to develop that business. But it was really exciting as well. I enjoyed that. I love just I guess, the adrenaline of creating your own business and the entrepreneurship side of that. However, entrepreneurship can be lonely as well. You no longer have those, colleagues to work with or business ideas out of and really just bounce things off of. So that part was really challenging. But ultimately, I was looking over time for a way to fill that gap, right? That solarpreneurship gap, if you will, of being your own independent business owner. And ultimately, I think that's what led to where we are today with Workforce Strategy Advisors, which, you know, is a consortium of multi-independent consultants and advisors and strategists that come together in a consortium to work together and compete together on a larger scale. And I'm so proud of that because I have those colleagues now. Yes, I'm still running my own business. So are they, but we come together in a real way and can work on projects together or just bounce ideas off of each other. And you really feel a part of something and you have a team. So now, organizations can go to a global consulting practice, right? One of the big 4 or 5 out there, or they can come to a consortium like Workforce Strategy Advisors and get direct to talent, executive level, advisory services. You're no longer working with a junior consultant, right? You're working straight with somebody that has sat in an executive seat and has a very services and technology agnostic approach to advisory for their client.
Awesome. Awesome. So kind of coming on to the next topic, and that's market trends. So what are the big shifts that you're seeing currently within perhaps your industry and across the different industries that you operate in? What is the biggest trend or shift that you're currently seeing today?
Well, we work a lot with not only the services side, but the technology, the SaaS world, technologies that touch human capital management or vendor management, for organizations. If you will, HCM tools like Workday, Ceridian, AP, right? You have a lot of these large HCM tools, but also these vendor management tools as well, such as, Beeline, Fieldglass, Venly, these big tools that are out there as well, and managing those. What we're seeing now, the requirement on a lot of these technologies is AI, right? It's everywhere. We're seeing it in every single industry. But almost every customer that comes to me now with advice on which technology is going to be the right fit for their purpose and their needs, conversation is always going to be now, how does AI play into that? How can AI help them find the best talent? How can AI streamline their processes within their organization? So I would say That's top of conversation right now and that I'm having daily with clients and colleagues is really how AI is evolving so quickly and what can it do to improve organizational transformation and workforce transformation and recruiting.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Completely agree. What is your perspective on social media? Because the trend of AI now is perhaps what social media was when it first came out. You had all these different apps coming out and people weren't really on social media. Whereas now, if you're not on social media, it's like, hang on, what are you doing? So how
Right.
important has social media been to your success as an entrepreneur, to the businesses that you've worked in? And what is your overall perspective on social media as a whole? A net positive or a net negative?
I have this love-hate relationship with it, with social media, if you will, Harris. It is absolutely required in running a business now, right? When I started my career 20 years ago, obviously it was not around, it wasn't a part of that world at the time. And to see where it is today, I mean, it is absolutely required. So for me, trying to stay on top of and getting the awareness out of the business, right? On top of wearing all the hats, to run a business. But now I'm having to really focus on the podcasting piece or, getting our word out, our name out there and services, right? And social media is such a huge piece of that. So it's again, love-hate relationship with it, but it's such a requirement now. And it has done a lot of good for the growth of my business quickly.
Absolutely amazing. Now, Candice, when it comes to the business, is there any exciting projects that are perhaps coming up? Is there some perhaps interesting news that you can share with the business? And maybe a chance to, people to understand the business a little bit more. What are some areas of the business that you're most proud of? Right, obviously you've grown massively, you have such a strong team around you. But what is the area that you're most proud of within the business?
When I started out to build Workforce Strategy Advisors, also known as WSA, I had this vision of this entire ecosystem working together, right? So, not just the consortium of advisors, but also organizations that would like to tap into that partnership with those advisors on a regular basis. And then the providers that serve this world of workforce strategy and human capital and business transformation, right? So those technology and service providers that serve that world. So I was looking to build a collaborative ecosystem that supports that entire community. So building out WSA meant the three kind of member communities of the consultants, the providers, and the enterprise organizations collaborating together, but also three support communities that elevate those three member communities, which are the legal services and partnering with a law firm out of DC that actually elevates our member community's best interests, right? So they're legal liaisons, if you will, and helping us interpret what's going on in U.S. legislative law, right, in laws that are being passed today or are potentially looking at being passed and how they impact our industry as a whole. So partnering with a law firm in D.C. to help advocate for our interests as a collective community. And then we've developed what I think what I'm really proud of too, besides this entire ecosystem that's supporting each other, we've developed a mentorship program because, everyone I've talked to ultimately has a mentor along the way that's helped support them in their growth in their career. And I think that's so important. And today I think about the youth that is leaving either high school or college and entering the workforce. And from my seat, how lonely that must be at this point in the environment it is today. Not everyone's going and working in an office like I did at that age, right? So many people are choosing to work remote, which is great. That flexibility is great. But I also think about how much I learned just sitting and being around and hearing my peers and the executives and mentors around me, right? So that is so hard to replace. We built this program. It's called Camp for CAMs. CAMP is Career Advancement Mentorship Program, and the CAMs are our career advancement mentees. And what we do is we actually partner a mentee with a mentor, part of our advisory group. And so, they've all sat in an executive seat at one point, right? So we actually are partnering these mentors and mentees. And it's a 6-month program that they actually have to apply for, be serious about, and help support one another through growth. So when I call it a mentorship program, but the mentors, I think, get just as much out of it from their mentees. My mentee can do stuff so much faster than I can with social media, with things like Canva and, graphics and everything, right? And AI. So being able to even lean on my mentee for those things that just come second nature to her are great. So our mentees actually help support their mentors' independent businesses, and our mentors help the growth of their mentees as they enter the workforce. So I'm really proud of that one.
Amazing. And that's really powerful because, as people say, network is your net worth. Having those people around you that you can lean on and just bounce back ideas is also valuable. And I think people forget that in business. They're so, I guess so. You're just worried about running your own business and kind of, landing deals and delivering and doing a good job for your clients, that you forget how powerful a network is. And I'm glad that that's something you really put a lot of importance on. But on the flip side now, what is some areas of the business that you're having some challenges? What are some areas of the business that you have struggled with in the past? Or perhaps you have some hurdles that you're looking to overcome now and in the future? Because if somebody's in a similar position, perhaps they can relate and get some really good insight or advice. What would you say to that?
Or, just this is a startup still, right? We're still very new, workforce strategy advisors. So I think the branding and getting that awareness of who we are, what we're doing. And as I went through and I told you about the ecosystem, it's so multifaceted, right? So that's, it's hard to explain to organizations what we're doing and how they can benefit from it sometimes because there's so many legs to that stool. So I think one of the challenges for me early on was really simplifying what we're doing and why we're doing it, and getting the word out to everyone and how it benefits them, right? How organizations can tap into this community, but also utilizing it for services and consulting and project services as well. So that was tough. I think the social media part was tough. Leaning on your peers in your network, I think, is my best advice. And being able to tap into your network and really making sure everybody in your personal and professional world know what you're doing so they know how to support you. Relationships, obviously, such a huge key to that. I didn't see as much early growth from my businesses, not just this one, but previous ones. Organic growth and people coming to me through my website or social media. It was all about who I knew or my reputation, right? And those existing relationships that I knew once before. And that's what helped me grow. I was even talking to one of our mentees the other day, not mine, but part of the camp program, and just telling her as she's looking to apply to do positions. She just graduated college and really wanted to do it on her own and not lean on her relationship. She really wanted to find that success on her own. And I told her, I'm like, you have to lean on your relationships. I cannot think of one position or one client ultimately that I got over the years that it wasn't because of someone that knew me or my reputation or my organization's reputation, right? So that's a challenge in itself, right? Trying to get organic clients to find us without having that existing network already in place. That's tough and challenging. But my recommendation to others is you have to tap into your community and the people that know you, because ultimately those that know you and trust you are going to be those that refer you or want to work with you again.
That's brilliant. Brilliant. Well said. Now, what does the future look like for yourself, for the business, for people in your network? Where do you want to kind of take this mission? If we're talking the next 6 months, 12 months, maybe even beyond, what does that look like? Is it about metric-based goals, about getting to that next number, or is it about impact and leaving sort of a legacy? What would you say?
That's tough. I would say the impact piece, it's not so much the legacy for me, but it's the impact on how our entire consortium or ecosystem supports one another, right? So it's not just for one of those 3 member communities, but really how we're supporting one another. That's what I wanted to grow and build. So I guess you could say that is the legacy I'm trying to build is how those member communities support one another, how enterprise organizations can tap into the consulting advisory group or consortium and for their partner in all service agnostic services and technology support as needed, right? Coming to us for that advice and understanding what those organizational needs are, and being able to match them with the right technology and service providers, right? So we're going in organically to look at the needs and systems and existing systems and processes and workflows for our clients, and being able to make those recommendations on the provider side. Equally, we work with the providers as well in helping them with their go-to-market strategy and how they can get to the next level, because our group of advisors within WSA has sat in their seats before, right? And ran those type of businesses. So being able for those providers to tap into that consortium as well is so invaluable. Continuing that growth and to expand that membership community, as well as just providing project services from our consortium and how we all work together. To me, that's the next step in continuing to grow those communities.
Amazing. And what is the biggest piece of advice that you've ever received from somebody? And it could be a family member, a colleague, mentor, even mentee. What is the biggest piece of advice or lesson that you've learned that you're really grateful for? And if somebody really listens in, takes action on it, they could see some really big change in their personal life, their business as well. What would you say to that?
I think remembering in almost every interaction, regardless of what seat someone is sitting in, right? Whether it's a client or a partner, a colleague, the advice I was given at one point and heard over and over and over again from my mentor that was my uncle was ultimately people in general just want to win and feel cared about and loved. So remembering that we're all in it to hopefully win and be successful, and in those relationships feel like my needs are heard and I'm being cared about, right? And trying to take a look at every interaction that way was such, you know, it really does boil down to something that simple, right? Just remembering that everybody is here to win and hopefully, and feel like they're being heard and cared about and loved, right? So
Definitely.
sometimes not everyone uses the word loved in business and professional services. I'm in the people industry, so it's a little bit more. I can say that a little bit more, but that at the end of the day, it really is all about caring for people's needs and helping them become successful as well.
Amazing. Candice, thank you so much for such an amazing podcast episode. So much value, so much detail, and so much insight, which I've enjoyed, and I'm sure everybody listening has really found a lot of value in. So thank you from all of us. Is there any closing comments or final thoughts that you have for anybody listening? And how can people find you? How can people reach out, continue the conversation, and stay in tune, keep up to date? How can people do that?
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you for having me, Harris. I appreciate you reaching out and finding me on social media and being able to connect
Pleasure.
and have this podcast. Definitely, if anyone wants to reach out to our organization, it's workforcestrategyadvisors.com, or send an email to Candice, Candice, at workforcestrategyadvisors.com, and I'd be happy to return a call or email there.
And thank you once again, and thanks to everyone who tuned in today. We'll catch everyone next time. Bye bye.